Okay, today's class is sponsored in memory of Grandpa Joe, Joe R. Bibi, Yosef Ben Esther, and today is his yahrzeit by Sammy Jamal and Jonah Bibi. Okay, we are on page Tet Amud Aleph, 9A1 if you're following in the art scroll, bottom of the last lines on the page on the English, and right in the middle of the daf in the Hebrew. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan taught, Matar b'shvil echad. God brings rain even for the sake of one. Parnasah b'shvil rabim. But he brings parnasah, so a lot of rain, or the development of the fields in a good way, or a person's in general livelihood, that comes b'shvil rabim, for the many. That doesn't come just for one person. The Gemara has to prove this point. So how does it do so? Matar b'shvil yachid. The matar comes for one. Dichtiv yiftach Adonai lecha et otzaro atov. Latet mitar etzacha. God is going to open His good storehouse with rain, and who's He going to give it to? Yiftach Hashem lecha. Lecha is singular. It's for one person, for you. Therefore, you see that a person can get rain even if it's just one person who's asking. Parnasah b'shvil rabim. How do we know that parnasah is for the many? Dichtiv hineni mamtir lachem. Lechem. I'm going to give you. See, the lechem is the finished product. It's how everything developed. How did it grow the right way? Was the quality okay? Did you lose the product in the winnowing process or in the threshing process or whatever the case might be? So there you see, it says lachem and not lecha when it comes to the lechem, to the finished, to the final product. So you see, parnasah is done for the rabim. The Gemara continues. Me teve. Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda asks a question. Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda, sorry, the Gemara asks a question. Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda omer, Shlosha parasim tovim amdu Yisrael. Three great leaders that the Jewish people have who helped support us and stand us up. Eluhen, Moshe, the Aaron, Miriam. Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. V'gimel matanot tovot nitanu al yadam. And three great presents were given through these three parnasim. And who were they? Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. What did they give? Ve'eluhen. What were the presents? Be'er, ve'anan, uman. The be'er, the well that traveled to the Jewish people in the desert, that gave them water wherever they were in the desert. Ve'anan, and the clouds of glory that surrounded the Jewish people, and as well that guided them. Uman, and the manna that fell from heaven. Literally, this week's parasha. Okay? The be'er was a rock, a stone that traveled with them, and that produced the water. In fact, we're going to see exactly what happened, each one, who is it from, and what happened when those people passed away. The Gemara continues. Be'er b'schut Miriam. The well was in the merit of Miriam. Amud Anan b'schut Aaron. The Amud, the Anan, was in the merit of Aharon HaKohen. Man b'schut Moshe. And the manna was in the merit of Moshe. Meta Miriam. How do we know that this is the case? That each one was the reason for that thing. Meta Miriam nistaleka be'er. When Miriam passed away, the be'er, it disappeared. It stopped producing its water. Shnei Amar. V'tamot sham Miriam. Miriam died there. Uchtiv patre. And immediately following the pasuk, telling us about Miriam's death, the pasuk continues that says, V'lo haya mayim le'edah. There was no water for the people, illustrating that up until that point, there was water for the people. So there's a confluence of Miriam dying and the water being there for the people. So therefore we see that it was in the merit of Miriam that the well was there, and that once she passed away, we lost it. And that's why they were complaining, we have no water. So the water and the water came back in the merit of Moshe and of Aaron, in the merit of the two of them. Met Aharon, the Gemara continues, Met Aaron, when Aaron passed away, Nistalku ananei hakavod, the clouds that protected the Jewish people disappeared. So that tells us that they were in his merit. Shnei Amar, Vayishma Knaani melech Arad, the Knaani, the king of Arad, he heard, Mashmu'a Shama. What hearing did he hear? Shama shemet Aharon. He heard that Aharon passed away, because that's what comes right before it. V'nistalku ananei hakavod, and ananei hakavod, they disappeared. How do we know? The Kesavur, when he saw that the clouds that were surrounding the Jewish people were protecting them, that were obscuring them from view, they disappeared. Kasavur, he thought, Nitenalo Reshut Lilachem Yisrael. He thought he was being given divine permission to attack the Jews. You see, the protection that they had all this time had disappeared. V'hainu d'chtiv, that's what it means when it says, Vayir'u kol ha'eda ki gava Aaron. And all the people saw that Aharon had passed away. Amar Rabbi Avahu teaches, Al tikri vayir'u, don't read vayir'u, that the people saw that Aharon died. Ela, rather, vayira'u, and they were seen. And the people were seen. Why? Ki gava Aaron, because Aaron passed away. Up until this point, they'd been obscured from view because they were surrounded by the clouds, the Ananei Kavod. Once these clouds, this fog around them had lifted, suddenly they were visible to the naked eye. So the king of Canaan, the Melech Arad, saw that they were visible. He thought this was a divine sign that he was allowed to attack them. So again, you see this concept that the clouds were there in the merit of Aharon. How do we see that? Because when he died, they disappeared. Like Resh Lakish learned, the Amar Resh Lakish, ki mishamesh be'arba leshonot. Every time you see the word ki in the Torah, it can be used in 4 different ways. I, Dilma, Ela, Deha. Ki could mean any of 4 different things. Ki could mean I, maybe. It could mean Dilma. It could mean maybe, it could be maybe. So I is if, sorry. I means if. It could mean Dilma, which means maybe. It could mean Ela, which means but. Or it could mean Deha, which means because, or that. So in this pasuk, what does it mean? Vayira'u, and they were seen, kol ha'eda, ki, because, right? Gava Aharon. In the simple interpretation of the pasuk, how would you read ki? Vayir'u kol ha'eda, and all the people saw, ki gava Aharon, that Aharon had passed. Okay? So the word ki can indicate a few different explanations, specifically 4. So, hodu la Hashem ki tov. Say thanks to God, ki tov, because He is good. It would not mean Hodu Hashem ki tov if He is good.
How do you know?
Hodu Hashem ki tov, Hodu Hashem, maybe He's good. How do you know? You know by the context.
But sometimes the context can technically,
It's
more than one
dependable.
word could fit.
So when the context is malleable, it could be either of 2 things. Then you learn both of them as lessons. Okay? So anytime you have a lesson, like the Gemara's expression is, shikulim hem, when things are equal, all things, yani, being equal, what do? You go with both. And each one of them is emet, and they can both be true. Okay? And it's actually very interesting, sometimes when you see ki, like I'll give you a perfect example. Odecha amonai, I will give you thanks, Hashem, ki ainitani.
What
Right?
does Tani mean?
So anitani can mean that you answered me. So odecha
Been answered.
Hashem ki anitani, because you have answered me. Okay? So there ki would mean because.
I'm thankful because you answered.
Another interpretation is initani doesn't mean answered.
If you answer me,
It comes from a lashon of inui. I thank you, Hashem. Inui means for my suffering. Ki initani could mean there, I thank you, Hashem, even though I've suffered. Why? Because I'm looking now in the aftermath of the challenges, the suffering I went through, and I could thank you even though. You understand? So the change of the words gives you many different times, many different beautiful lessons. Okay. Chazeru shenehem. In any case, both things now, the Be'er and the Ananei Kavod, are now missing their patrons. Because the Be'er was there for Miriam, she had passed. The Ananei Kavod were there for Aaron, and he's passed.
well, how come then?
Shenehem b'zechut Moshe. The 2 of these came back now, only in the merit Moshe. So now Moshe is holding all 3 things on his own merit. Met Moshe, but once Moshe died, nistalku kulan. All of the 3 things that the Jewish people had, they disappeared. They no longer had the man, they no longer had the Ananei Kavod, they no longer had the mayim. Shneimar, like the pasuk says, ve'akhid et sheloshet haroim b'yerach echad. And I took away the 3 shepherds in 1 month. Yes, the Gemara. V'chi b'yerach echad metu. Did they die in 1 month? Ve'halo Miriam meta b'Nisan. The pasuk tells us that Miriam dies in Nisan. Ve'Aaron be'Av, and Aaron passes away in the Chodesh of Av. U'Moshe be'Adar, and Moshe dies in the month of Adar. So what does it mean that I took away the 3 shepherds in 1 month, in one time? Ela Alma is trying to tell you. Ela, excuse me, is trying to tell you. Melamed shenitbatelu gimel matanot tovot shenitenu al yadan. That there were 3 great gifts that were given to us by these 3 shepherds. V'nistalku kulan b'yerech achad, and they all disappeared in which month? Which month did they disappear? They disappeared when Moshe died. Which month is that? In the month of Adar. Alma ashkechan parnasa b'shvil yachid. Hold up. Parnasa, in this instance, who's it coming from? Which we're referring to? We're referring to the manna, right? Whose merit was the man Parnasa coming in? Whose merit?
Moshe.
Moshe's. So you see, Parnasa comes for one person. Now I already prepared you for the answer for this in last week's class. In fact, it was the very last thing that I said. Answers the Gemara, no, you're misunderstanding me. Shani Moshe is different. Kiva de lerabim ubai. Since he was asking for the many, kirabim dami. It's the needs of the many. Even though he's footing the bill, he's saying this round's on me. It's not the merit that can't come from one. It's the use that can't go for one. So God doesn't give parnasa to one person. But God could give parnasa because of one person. Okay? Now, I mentioned to you earlier that that's actually what happens when a person is praying for parnasa, and they say to God, if I get parnasa, what am I going to do with it? I'm going to give a tremendous amount to tzedakah. Now your parnasa is the needs of who? Of the single or the many?
Many.
The many. So you're in a certain sense tricking the system. You're not tricking the system because it is for the many. Okay? In fact, we have a beautiful line on this point before we depart from here, where the Gemara says that the whole of the world is nizon b'shvil chanina beni, for the sake of my son Chanina, Chanina Mendoza. So you see, again, the same concept, that Hashem says this individual, is worthy of having the whole world fed in his merit. I thought you don't give parnasa to a single person. The answer is, I'm not giving parnasa to a single person. I'll be giving parnasa because of a single person. Got it?
Yep.
Okay, let's continue. Some wild Gemaras here, okay? Awesome. Rav Huna bar Manoach, Rav Huna the son of Manoach, Rav Shmuel bar Idi, Rav Chia mivestanya, which I think sounds like an amazing place that should be adopted immediately by Disney. Doesn't that sound like a magical kingdom?
Yeah.
This is David. He comes to us from Vestania. Anyway, fine. Okay. Rav Chia mivestanya havu. Shchichi kameh Rava. They used to find themselves, they used to frequent, or they, as some people call it incorrectly, frequent. They used to stay by Rava. They would learn from Rava, from the great Amorah, the contemporary of Abaye. They studied with him. Kinach nafshe, when he passed away, Rava, atu lekamed Rav Papa. They moved to Rav Papa's shiur. Kol emat dehave amalu shmaita velo have mistabra lahu. Every time he would say a teaching that they did not understand, or they didn't agree with, or didn't jive with what they'd learned from Rava, havu miramzi ahadadi. They would give each other signals, like, oh, he did it again. They would show, maybe nod their heads, smile, point. They did a signal illustrating that they disagreed because they didn't hold the same way as him in the Gemara class or in the Halakha. Chalash da'ateh. His feelings were hurt, Rav Papa, the rabbi. Okay, where are we? Okay, we've now turned to Tet Amud Bet, the top, which is 9b1. Akruye bechalma. In his dream, Rav Papa read the pasuk. Ve'akhid et shiloshet haroim. And I took away the 3 shepherds. Rav Papa understood that to mean that these 3 rabbis, Rav Shmuel bar Idi, Rav Chia bar Vestanya, and Rav Huna bar Manoach, they were all going to be taken away. They were going to die young. because they'd hurt the feelings of the great rabbi. I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. The power, the Gemara, the Mishnah in Avot says, to play with the honor of a Talmid Chacham is like playing literally with fire. Because a person, he says, it's like getting bitten by a poisonous snake. It's like touching boiling hot coals. Bar Minan, the result of people that don't take the kavod of the rabbi properly. So here, they were just saying that they didn't hold. They disagreed. Rava, but they were mirab, but they caused him pain. And the fact that it hurt his feelings, he gets this dream that they're going to die. The next day, when they were leaving the shiur, Amar lahu, he said to them, Lezlu Rabbanan bishalma. Rabbis, you should go in peace. He gave them a beracha that they should be protected, that they shouldn't be punished because of him. In fact, I don't know if everyone here says Kriyat Shema al Mitah, but one of the lines we say in the Kriyat Shema at the nighttime is Velo ye'anesh hineni mochel v'solech l'kol mi sheyachis v'yeknit oti. I forgive anyone who angered me, who started up with me, right? It's a beautiful thing to do. Imagine at night letting go of all the fights, all the anger, all the upset, all the grudges.
We're up to in Berachot, like this week, we're learning about that.
So you let it go. And then we say, Velo ye'o ve'ali anesh shum adam b'sibati. Let no one be punished on my behalf. I don't want that on my, some guy dies now, he doesn't, his family doesn't have support. Why? Because he insulted. I don't want that. Like, I don't gain anything from his punishment. I don't want that. I don't want it. Rav Papa was saying, let them all travel b'shalom. Interesting notation that he says, the Gemara's expression over here is bishalma. If you look, there's a little aleph over there. Right at the top you see the Mesoret HaShas. In the upper left-hand corner of the page, you see the little aleph. And he changes the word from bishalma to lishalma. You see that?
Where?
You got that? Lishalma?
Where?
The bold letters in the upper left-hand corner of the page. Literally, top left corner word in the page. You see the aleph takes you to there, the Masoret HaShas.
What do you mean he changed the word?
He says that in other, one of the things we learned about is, in the beginning, is that this Gemara is the Hotza'ah, is the edition that came from Vilna. So there were different Gemaras that they printed from. So sometimes you had a word in the Gemara because it was handwritten. So when they printed it, they chose a specific manuscript. But he's telling you that in other manuscripts, it doesn't say Bishalma, it says Lishalma. Because Bishalo means like you're done. That's the final thing you say.
Like, see you later.
At the funeral, we use the word Bishalma. Like that they should rest in peace. That's right? When we say that, rip, what are we saying? Rest bishalom. Lishalma means to shalom. Because you're still moving. Okay?
I heard somebody say that לצאת לשלום ולחזור כאילו not to say בשלום.
צאתכם לשלום, בואכם לשלום. We don't say צאתכם bishalom.
Right.
Because that's chalas. You ain't coming back. Okay.
Goodbye.
Now, the alternative, maybe another way to understand the Gemara, was actually he was telling them bishalom, but he was saying to them, leave the shiur. Not because he wanted to get rid of them,
Right.
but because he was trying to figure out a way. There's a very interesting Gemara in Berachot that you'll come to as well. I think it's on Gemara's, on page 64. The Gemara over there says that Hakol Holech, when it comes to dreams, everything goes Achar Hapitaron, after the interpretation. So let's say you have a dream that's worrying you. You interpret it, it's for the good.
Right.
Imagine a dream, right? Imagine a dream, someone dies in the dream. What do you say? You say that they're going to shift into, and now they're going to move on to a new stage in their life. Get a new job, they're going to get remarried, right? So you interpret it that the old person has died, now there's something new. There's a new beginning. So you're interpreting it in a positive way. So always there's a halacha that a person should interpret things for the good. Got it? Ready for this? This is wild. According to this, Rav Papa said to them, alamak, please don't come back to the shiur, and therefore it's bishalma. But then he interpreted the dream, ve'akhid et shloshet haroim, that I will take away the three students. He made a way that they could be taken away, not in terms of dying, but in terms of no longer being part of his group. So by doing that, he saved their lives. Wow. Isn't that beautiful? You got that? I see you missed that.
I don't get it.
I always tell him the Ray face.
Yeah.
You missed it?
It's a loophole.
In the dream, he saw that I'm going to take away these three shepherds. He's bifledged now. They're going to die because he was insulted.
He turned it.
So what does he do? He tells him, leave the shiur. Lech b'shalom. I don't want to see you again.
By that he protected.
And by having it be that he didn't see them again, he made a possible out for the dream. He found a legal loophole.
Twisted it.
He twisted it for the positive. Their lives should be saved. Okay? So either way, you got it now? Still not.
No, he got it.
I understand the concept.
Yes.
I mean, I understand. I just don't understand how that. Why is it just out of sight, out of mind? Maybe they moved it, and now I don't know because.
No, not maybe they mooted. The idea that Akhid, that God said to them, I'm going to take them away, it could be I'm going to take them away from the class.
Oh.
But if they're in the class, what does take them away mean? They're going to die. So I'm going to come up with an alternate meaning. Like, let's say you have a contract. The contract says that this person on this deal has to get a benefit of 10%. So that's going to kill you now. So what do? You find something else that you could call a benefit, and then you give the guy 10% of that benefit.
Right.
Free coffee every day. How'd that get? A tenth of a cup of coffee. Right? You redefine the benefit. What did he do? He redefined the taking away. Okay? Now this tells you,
Now he got it.
the point here for me is as well, it's a practical thing. If a person has a dream, it's really getting him nervous, and he's done the hatavat chalom, he's done these things, and doesn't feel like it's enough. So one of the ways to do it is to actually dress up the dream or this thing, this feeling inside of him, and give it another expression. So not kind of make believe some other answer, but actually to literally turn it into something that what's it called? That means what's it called? I remember there was someone that said to me he was terrified. He had a dream that he saw in his dream that they said in his dream it said he's going to leave. He's not going to be able to. He's not going to live on this earth. He's not going to live ba'aretz. And he was petrified, and he did everything, and nothing worked. And he said he went to a rabbi in Israel, and the rabbi said, "We've done everything we can here for you, but your problem is in yourself. They're not letting go of this feeling of dread in Shamayim. It's still staying with you." So he said, "What's the issue? What do you do?" The answer, he said, "Move." He says, you're living I forgot where the guy was living, whatever country he was living in. He says, pick up your family, move to another country. And then you fulfill the dream where it says, you're not going to live ba'aretz, right? In that, because aretz could mean the earth, but it could also mean the land.
Right.
And the guy, and again, you have to realize, this is how disturbed the guy is, losing weight, anxiety, Xanax, everything. His life was in disarray. He felt like there was a thing hanging over his head. Sometimes people get these feelings. That's how bad it was. It was worth moving his family to another country. He moved, and then he was relaxed But it's a beautiful way of being able to solve something like this. Okay, let's move on. Gemara continues. Rav Simi Bar Ashi, Havishchiach Kamed Rav Papa. Rav Simi Bar Ashi was always found in the classes of Rav Papa. He was brilliant. Okay, very sharp, very incisive mind. He used to ask a lot of good questions, questions that were hard to answer, but also a lot of them. Listen to this, it's wild. Yom Achad, one day, Chazia de Nafal al Apeh. He saw that Rav Papa was doing the Nefilat Apayim. So you know we do Anna every day in the Beit Knesset? So we do Tachanun, we do it like this. You ever see the Ashkenaz do it? They take their hand, and that's called Nefilat Apayim. That's what they used to do. Even what we do is called Nefilat Apayim, but we don't put our hands down. It's not our minhag. But that's what they used to do. They used to put their head down. Right. They used to prostrate themselves sometimes on the floor, begging Hashem for forgiveness. But that was also a time that a person would use to add in their own personal requests in their own language. Okay? Rav Simi Bar Ashi is standing next to Rav Papa, and what does he hear? He hears the Rav Papa, he's praying to God. Shema'ayeh, he heard him, the Amar, Rahmana litzlan, mikisufa teshimi. May God protect me from the embarrassment of Shimi. His rabbi is praying to God, and what's he praying? Please Hashem protect me from the humiliation of this guy, that he asks me questions that I find difficult to answer. Kabil aleh, he accepted on himself shtikuta. From then on, he accepted on himself like a vow of silence. V'tulo akshile. And after that, he no longer asked him any questions. Now, I want to just revisit this. Imagine what we're talking about over here is that Rav Simi asked him questions, and the rabbi didn't have good answers to his questions, right? And therefore, he was teaching them the wrong halakha. Of course, in that scenario, it would not be the appropriate thing for Rav Simi to stop asking questions. We're talking about over here when Rav Papa, he had the halakha and he was right about the halakha, but he would ask him a super technical question that it was difficult to work out on the spot, on the fly, and in the class it would seem as if he's not, as if he didn't have a good handle on the material, or if he didn't write. There's even a halakha like this. The halakha goes, En sho'alin shelo ke'inyan. You know what that means? A person's not allowed to ask, you're not supposed to ask your rabbi, shelo ke'inyan, not on the topic that's being discussed. So as an example, we're sitting here learning Taanit, someone goes, Rabbi, what's the baracha on? Mizor, yeah. Well, there's not a beracha on Mizor, no, but which beracha do you make on a everlasting gobstop? Okay? I mean, my head's in this. I can't think of that now. I gotta be in the right set of right mind frame to be able to. So we say en sho'alin shelo ke'inyan. Sometimes you meet people.
Yes, provoking.
En sho'alin ella. Shelo ke'inyan. They only ask. Guy, you do a whole thing. The guy asks you, Rabbi, what's the deal with Mashiach? What's gonna happen? Right? They only ever ask questions. The only time they're not gonna ask questions about Mashiach or Olam Haba is if you're learning about Mashiach. What's the beracha on a pretzel, right? So some people that why? Maybe they're ADHD or something, so they're not focused over here. The very fact that you are hyper-focused on this means that it's hard for them to focus on this.
Correct.
So the ADHD way to take them to Mashiach or pretzels, okay? So that's so you see over there that the student, the rabbi, a lot of times, even if he has the answer, it might be difficult for him to access that answer when he's in the middle of something else. Mm-hmm. So Rav Simi understood that if Rav Papa was asking Hashem to save him from the embarrassment, he stopped asking the question. And what we learned from the Gemara before is, he's a lucky man that he stopped asking the question. I have a third interpretation in this Gemara. Tell me what you think.
It's sensitivity too.
Wait, hold on.
Oh.
A third interpretation in this Gemara.
Oh.
I think that it didn't happen to be that Rav Simi was standing next to Rav Papa and he overheard him say this.
Yeah.
I think Rav Papa made sure that he prayed next to Rav Simi.
Oh.
And then he does the Nifilat Apayim, and then he says, Hashem Dachilak, please
Save me from
Shemi.
That's funny.
And then it would fit actually with the same Gemara before, where if Papa was trying to save his student from the punishment of embarrassing his rabbi.
Right.
I have no proof that this is true.
It's beautiful.
But I think it fits.
Why is
It fits the Hemshech of the Gemara.
Everyone's going after Rav Papa.
Hazi,
The
right?
guy, Shimmy.
Hazi.
Maybe he needs to step down. I don't know. Maybe he's Joe Biden.
No, no, Chas v'shalom.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
But he.
Not give him back.
By the way, this is the last guy you want to dig at.
We just said you
Hold
can't
on,
look at the
hold on.
rabbi.
Leave the shiur. You just saved Ray's life. Okay, so the idea here, right? The idea here is that they were disagreeing with him, not because he was wrong. I think you're actually only reinforcing my point.
Right.
They were disagreeing with him because they were the students of another. They were the lifetime students of another rabbi. You have this, by the way, a lot in our community.
Yes.
So someone says, "What time is Shabbat over?" Shabbat's over this time. Cham Baruch said.
So why are you asking?
I'm telling you what I hold. You're telling me what Cham Baruch says.
Right.
Not that I can argue with Cham Baruch. I'm a nobody. I'm a dirt on the bottom of the shoe.
Right.
But the point is that someone who grows up with one rabbi, Rabbi Hecht says, Rabbi Raymond the Rari told me, Rabbi Joe, each time the guy is telling you this story, this is my rabbi, by Joey Aber. Okay, he told you what he holds. I'm telling you what I hold. What do you want from my life? Do whatever you want. I don't care. You asked me. I'm telling you what I hold. So here, they weren't arguing with him.
Got it.
They weren't even challenging him. They would just note to one another, like, look, this is an area where we heard the opposite from Rava. But Rav Papa was a sensitive person, so I think maybe the opposite is the point here. Maybe it's not that everyone's there's a hit out on Rav Papa, but rather that Rav Papa was a sensitive soul. And since he was a sensitive soul, so these things bothered him. And since he was such a Talmid Chacham, that these things bothered him, in Shamayim they were very quick to defend his honor. So if anything, the fact that you mess with Rav Papa and Shamayim, they're hitting you with lightning bolts, tells you he ain't Joe Biden.
Yo, for sure.
If it was Joe Biden, they would hit other people with lightning bolts. Okay, let's move on. Says the Gemara. Ve'af Resh Lakish savar matar b'shvil yachid. Resh Lakish also holds that matar, that rain, only can come for a yachid. De'amar Resh Lakish minayin lematar b'shvil yachid. How do we know that matar, that rain falls for a single person? Dichtiv shalu me'Hashem matar be'et malkosh. Ask from God matar, rain, in the time of the final rains. Hashem oseh chazizim. God makes clouds. Umatar geshem yiten lahem, and rains he rains upon them. Leish esev basadeh, to each person for the grass basadeh, in the field. Yachol lakol, maybe you'd think that God only makes rain for when everybody needs it. Talmud lomar, the pasuk says laish, that God provides it even for the sake of one man, that one man needs it. Vitanya ilaish, and then it continues and says, even if you think laish yachol lechos adotav, you think if a guy needs it, okay, he has all the fields in Marlboro, New Jersey, and he's got the fields in New York, and so God is kind of turning on the sprinkler system, for the sake of all the guys' fields. Talmud lomar sadeh, it says laish esev basadeh, even if only one of his fields, so all of his fields are fine. He's got the one field in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. That field didn't get enough rain. Hashem will, even if the person prays and they merit it, will give a single person rain for a single field. Says the Gemara, Isadeh yachol lechol hasadeh. Maybe Hashem will give for the whole field only. Talmud lomar esev, for a single individual plant. That means that if there's one plant in the person's field that needs rain, and the person prays to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they merit it, there could be rain for one tree. Now, what's wild is, I don't know if you've ever seen these. Have you ever seen an incredibly selective rain where you're standing in the rain, and you see another person standing to a few feet away, not in the rain? Have you ever seen that?
Miami.
It's remarkable. You're looking at this guy, and that's dry as a bone, and I'm sitting here.
It's dry, and one of the roadside is rain.
And you're like, what am I, chopped liver? Like, what is this?
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing.
Now, really, we're learning from the Gemara and Taanit. It's the opposite. The guy who's not in the rain should be saying, what am I, chopped liver? Right? But you see that there's this concept of selective sustenance. 100%. And the Gemara says this actually occurred. Kihad Rav Daniel Bar Katina. There was a tremendous rabbi whose name was Daniel Bar Katina. He had a certain garden. Every day he would go and oversee his garden if it was growing. Amar, he said, Hai Mishra Baya Maya, this lane, this area, this part of the field needs rain. Veha Mishra Lo Baya Maya, and this lane of trees does not need rain. Ve'ata Mitra Ve'kamashki Kol Hecha Demebayale, and the rain would come and it would give only to the things that would need it. Now, obviously, you and I are not of the capability where we could have alternating row rain, on demand. You could see a guy, He's taking out your ex-girlfriend. You're like, Hashem, please make it rain on parking spot B4. Wait till he opens the sunroof, right? You know, we don't have the level. And by the way, if we're praying for rain, the guy who's taking out your ex-girlfriend, right, you already probably don't deserve it, right? But the point is, oh, he's saying that it's over. They say, okay, you get it, you move on, okay? But the point is, if a person was in that space, then the rain could be that selective. And the Gemara continues and says something remarkable. Mai Hashem oseh chazizim. What does it mean that God makes clouds? Pray for rain. Ask Hashem for rain. And God makes the clouds. Amar Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yossi, and son of Hanina said, Melamed shekol tzadik v'tzadik Hakadosh Baruch Hu oseh lo chaziz b'fnei atzmo. Every tzaddik in the world has a cloud with his name on it. She biflij. You know, they were onto something when they had the star registry. You know, you could pay $100 and have a star named after you. It's just they went a little too high. it was in the clouds. All right. My Hazizim. Ask the Gemara if that's the case. What is it? So what does this mean? Chazizim. It says plural, right? It's chaziz. Every tzaddik has his own. Amar Yehuda says porchot. Chazizim means that they move. They're clouds that they really move quickly. What does it mean that they move quickly? It means that there's different layers of clouds. There's upper, like clouds that are further higher in the atmosphere, heavier, darker clouds, and then there's clouds that are lower. And a lot of times when you see them against the backdrop of clouds further away in the atmosphere, it looks like they're moving much quicker. So that's what the chazizim are. They come in, and I think the point that he's making is, and this is why they're referring to them as these flying clouds, because it's almost ROD. Rain on demand. So like, you know, what are you going to wait all day? I need only this plant to be watered, right? So the Sadiq has the ability to be able to pull that out, relatively quickly. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says porchot, that they fly. Rabbi Yochanan, siman lematar porchot. Siman lematar porchot. When you want to know if it's going to rain, you look for the clouds that move quickly like that. My porchot, Amar Papa, Eva klisha, Tuti Eva Smichta. Rav Papa taught, back to Rav Papa, the light clouds against or underneath the heavy dark clouds. Amar Yehuda, Nehila Mikame Mitra, Ati Mitra. When there's a light rain that follows, that's followed by a heavy rain, that matar, that rain is a rain that's going to stay, that's going to make a real impact. So when it starts with a lighter, like a drizzle, then it ends off in this heavier rain, that rain is a rain that's going to sustain the crops. It's a rain of beracha. Batar mitra, when you have this light rain at the end, so in other words, it's not a heavy downpour, it's a heavy downpour tapering off into this little mild, this thin rain, psik mitra, the mitra is going to stop, and not only is it going to stop, but it's also going to stop having an effect. Mekame mitra, ati mitra, before the mitra, the rain is going to come. V'simanech, and how do you know? How do you remember this? Mihulta de batar mitra, psik mitra, v'simanech, charya de easy. And the Gemara brings a proof to this concept. So, 1 second. Right, okay, so the Gemara is now giving you a memory mnemonic. How will you remember that which rain is which? And the Gemara says it's to remind yourself of a sieve. So when you're sifting flour, so what comes through first? The finest flour is the thinnest. So that flour is the one that comes through the holes first. The coarse flour, as you go, the thicker flour then comes through after the fine flour goes through in the first pass through, so to speak. So that's a way of remembering which rain is the rain of the beracha. So the Gemara then continues and says that the second idea, right? So how do you know that that's the rain of beracha? You remember mehulta, the sieve, dibatar mitra, pasik mitra, that the rain, the thin rain that comes after the rain, it's going to be stopped. Simanech, the Gemara says, the sign for that is charya, the easy, which is not such a nice thing to remember. It's when a goat, they were agricultural society. This is something that they were very aware of. When the goats, when they would go to the bathroom, so what would happen first is they would have the darker, the heavier bowel movements, and then after that it would become a little bit thinner and it would become a little bit more liquidy or viscous, or less viscous. So the idea there is, again, you're seeing they were reminding themselves of this principle in halacha, using something that was very common to them in their day-to-day experiences. Okay. Let's just end off with this Gemara, the last Gemara, referring to the clouds, the fast-moving clouds. Ula ikla leBavel. Ula moved to Bavel. Chaza porchot, and he saw these flying clouds that we're speaking about, the thinner clouds that were underneath the heavier, higher clouds. Amar lehu, he said to them, Panu mani, please take away all of my clothing, all of my items, everything that's I don't want it to get ruined. Tehashta ati mitra, because it's going to start raining in a strong way. Lesof, says the Gemara, wah, 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 wah. In the end, lo ati mitra, it did not rain. Kihechi, Amar Ula said, Kihechi de mishakri bavlai, just as the Babylonians, the Bavel, people from Bavel, just like they lie, hachi mishakri mitrayu, so too their rain lies. Now, on a simple level, Ula is just saving face. Right? He's like, what do you mean? That's the sign for rain. I got the sign for rain, it didn't rain. He said, and they're like, oh, what happened, Ula? He's like, just like you guys are liars, your rain also is a liar. You have Babylonian lying rain. Right? But a deeper level of understanding is something that we've seen repeatedly in the Gemara, that when a person promises to give tzedakah, he doesn't give tzedakah, what happens? The rain clouds come in the sky, and they don't rain. So the rain, since it's a sign of beracha, it's inextricably linked with the reward and punishment of people. So if you promised at the sefer you're going to give tzedakah, that's like you're making the promise, and then you don't pay for it, you don't give it, it doesn't rain. It's the exact same thing here. What Ula was telling them was, you got the sign of rain, but then you didn't deserve it. Why? Because your people don't tell the truth. So your rain is being withheld from you. That's what Ula was communicating to them. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.